Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Barrasso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Kornze, for taking the time to visit with me in my office. As we discussed yesterday, I do remain concerned that you lack the experience required for the position of BLM director, specifically because the Federal Land Policy and Management Act states that the BLM director shall have a, quote, broad background and substantial experience in public land and natural resource management. The President's last nominee, Bob Abbey, had over 30 years of experience in land and natural resource management prior to his nomination. His predecessor, Jim Caswell, also had over 30 years of experience in land and natural resource management prior to his nomination. In contrast, as we've discussed, you spent less than 3 years at BLM and no time at any other land management agency. And with all due respect to the majority leader who is here to introduce you, I think this is not the resume of the perfect nominee, and to me it doesn't suggest that you will be the, quote, best director we've ever had, is how Senator Reid stated it. So now that the majority leader who happens to have been your former employer, has eliminated the rights of the minority in the confirmation process, I think it's more important than ever that this committee carefully weigh the qualifications of all nominees. It's imperative that this committee makes it clear that the lower threshold for confirmation does not mean a lower standard for nominees, and that the President cannot ignore the requirements of the federal law. There is a reason that the law requires the BLM director to have, quote, a broad background and substantial experience in public land and natural resource management. BLM manages about 245 million surface acres and 700 million mineral acres. The agency has about 10,000 employees. It's not a position for on-the-job training. It's a position that has an extraordinary impact on the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans. So I believe the burden remains on you, Mr. Kornze, to show us why you should be confirmed. So I'd like to turn to the BLM's pending hydraulic fracturing rule. Secretary Jewell has said that we need minimum federal standards for hydraulic fracturing. That may be the case with respects to states that do not regulate hydraulic fracturing, but there is no reason why BLM's rule should apply to states that currently regulate hydraulic fracturing. In June, Secretary Jewell was unable to tell this committee that the states currently regulating hydraulic fracturing aren't doing a sufficient job. Rather, the Secretary applauded the states that currently regulate hydraulic fracturing. The Secretary testified that Wyoming is a good example of a state that is doing an effective job regulating hydraulic fracturing. She testified in the House that Wyoming has quote, great, quote, sophisticated hydraulic fracturing rules. The Secretary made these comments before Wyoming adopted additional rules requiring baseline groundwater testing. Nevertheless, BLM still seems to believe that states like Wyoming just can't be trusted. So my question to you is there any evidence suggesting that states like Wyoming will weaken or roll back their hydraulic fracturing regulations? And if so, which states do you have in mind?
Senator, thank you for the question, and thank you for the time to meet yesterday. I enjoyed our conversation. Related to the hydraulic fracturing rule, there are some states that have certainly stepped out and appear to be doing a very good job. Wyoming is one of those states. Colorado, California, Texas have all taken the task seriously. We appreciate that very much. I think the task that we face at the Bureau of Land Management is that we have somewhere around 33 states where there are oil and gas revenues being produced on public lands. But there are just over half of those states have stepped forward to establish some sort of baseline regulation when it comes to hydraulic fracturing. So our goal is to establish something that can be coordinated with states to the greatest degree possible. In August, I was very happy to visit in Denver with the oil and gas regulators from many states, including Wyoming, to talk about how state regulations and federal regulations can fit better together, and also looking forward how our inspection and enforcement teams can be better coordinated so we can maximize our activities on the ground and make sure they're doing the best job in the oil and gas realm.
Thank you. I have one other question, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right.
Of course.
Great. And this is to Ms. Schneider. In June, you published a commentary on BLM's pending hydraulic fracturing rule. In that commentary, you wrote that BLM's revised rule, quote, would add another layer of regulation to oil and gas operators on federal and tribal lands, and if adopted, could impose significant new regulatory requirements and associated costs. If confirmed, you would oversee BLM. So what steps, if any, would you take to reduce the regulatory burden and the costs associated with BLM's hydraulic fracturing rule?
Senator, thank you for the question. I think we need to try to find ways to maximize our efficiencies where we can, including to work together with states in order to accomplish that goal. You know, I know that the BLM has just closed the public comment period a number of months ago on the rule. They're taking those comments into consideration. If confirmed, I would certainly become more involved in the process to learn and understand what the comments say so that we can develop a final rule that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.